I clutched the single gift bag I had flown 5 states with, my best suit suddenly feeling like a costume as I stood just outside the grand double doors of the ballroom. When my son Jordan emerged and saw me, he walked out with a tight smile and whispered, "Mom, you look nice, but I need you to wait here. It'll just be easier for everyone if you stay outside until the reception starts. Wait here." Easier for everyone. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I, who had worked 2 jobs for 3 years to cover his college loans, who had sent him $300 every month even after he got his first salary, who had bought the very wedding gift sitting in this bag, a $1,200 check I'd saved for 6 months. I was not everyone. I was no one. I stood there in the marble foyer, watching glittering guests stream past me into the ceremony, each one casting a curious glance at the black woman standing alone by a pillar like hired security. Jordan had already turned his back, straightening his boutonniere. Through the slowly closing doors, I caught a glimpse of his bride's parents in the front row, the seats I'd assumed were saved for me. The gift bag in my hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. The navy suit I wore had cost me $340 at Macy's, more than I'd spent on clothing in 2 years. I had imagined myself in Jordan's wedding photos, standing beside him, proof that all the sacrifice had been worth it, photos I would never be in. I had rehearsed my toast for weeks. I had called my sister in Atlanta to tell her I'd finally have family photos to hang on my wall. I had practiced not crying during the ceremony so I wouldn't ruin my makeup. For 2 months, I had planned this trip. I had used all my vacation days and maxed out my last credit card for the plane ticket. I had fasted 3 days a week to save money for his wedding gift. I had bought a new phone just so I could take good pictures. I had written him a letter, still in my purse, telling him how proud I was. All of that dissolved in 6 words. Wait here. Easier for everyone. The organ music started inside. I heard the rustle of guests standing, the collective intake of breath that meant the bride was coming down the aisle. My son was getting married, and I was standing in a hallway, hidden behind a marble pillar like something shameful. I pressed my back against the cold stone and closed my eyes. 26 years ago, I had held him in a hospital room with no flowers, no visitors, no father. I had sung to him while the nurses changed shifts. I had promised him everything would be okay, that I would give him everything I never had. I had kept that promise. God, how I had kept it. When he was 7 and wanted piano lessons, I worked weekend shifts at the diner for 6 months. When he was 15 and needed a laptop for school, I sold my mother's wedding ring. When he was 22 and got his first apartment, I co-signed the lease even though my credit was already stretched thin. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in our future, in the moment when he would look at me and see everything I had done, everything I had given up. This was supposed to be that moment. Instead, I was hiding. After 20 minutes of standing alone, Jordan came back out, looking over his shoulder. His face held that expression I'd seen 1,000 times, the one he wore when he needed something but didn't want to ask directly. "Mom, it's just, Vanessa's parents are traditional. They're still adjusting. After the ceremony, you can come in for dinner. Okay? Can you wait just a little longer?" But I knew what traditional meant. I knew what adjusting meant. I had heard it in Vanessa's voice during our last phone call, when she'd carefully asked if I was comfortable attending such a formal event. I had seen it in the seating chart he'd accidentally left open on his laptop when I visited last Christmas, my name penciled in at table 12, next to the caterer's entrance. Traditional meant white. Adjusting meant they were uncomfortable with a black mother-in-law. And my son. My Jordan. The boy I had raised to be proud of who he was, to stand tall in any room. He was asking me to make myself smaller. To wait in the shadows while he married into a family that saw me as something to be managed. How much longer? I heard myself ask, and hated the smallness in my voice. He checked his watch. Maybe 45 minutes? An hour? I'll text you. He would text me. At my own son's wedding. Jordan squeezed my shoulder, the kind of touch you'd give a stranger, and disappeared back through the doors. The lock clicked softly behind him. I stood there, alone in the marble foyer, holding $1,000 and a mother's broken heart, listening to my son promise his life to someone else while I waited outside like I'd never mattered at all. I slid down the pillar until I was sitting on the cold marble floor, my back against the stone, the gift bag beside me like a silent witness. The foyer was empty now. Everyone worth inviting was inside. The plane ticket had cost $487. I had checked 5 different websites, cleared my browser cache, searched in incognito mode, tried every trick the internet promised would lower the price. I had finally booked it at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, using a credit card I'd promised myself I wouldn't touch again. The interest rate was 23.9%. I had done the math. It would take me 8 months to pay it off if I didn't use the card for anything else. I wouldn't pay it off in 8 months. I never did. The hotel was another $320 for 2 nights. Not a nice hotel, the kind with thin walls and a breakfast that was just coffee and prepackaged muffins. But it was close to the venue. I hadn't wanted to ask Jordan if I could stay with him and Vanessa. I had learned not to ask for things like that. 3 years ago, when I'd visited for Thanksgiving, I'd slept on their couch. Vanessa had smiled and said, of course I was welcome, but I'd heard her on the phone with her mother the next morning. It's just a few days. I know. Jordan says she doesn't have anyone else. Like I was a charity case. Like my son was doing me a favor by letting me sleep in his living room. I hadn't visited since. But I had sent money. God, I had sent so much money. $300 a month for their rent when they'd first moved in together, because Jordan said his entry-level salary wasn't enough, and Vanessa was still in grad school. That was $10,800 over 3 years. I had kept a spreadsheet at first, telling myself it was a loan, that we'd settle up eventually. I'd stopped updating it after the first year. It hurt too much to see the number grow. Then there were the gifts, the $600 sofa set for their anniversary, the $400 kitchen table when they'd complained about eating on the couch, the $200 gift cards for groceries, sent every time Jordan mentioned money was tight, the $150 noise-canceling headphones for his birthday, the $180 cashmere scarf for Vanessa last Christmas, because Jordan had said she'd mentioned wanting one, and I'd wanted her to like me. She'd never worn it in any of the photos she posted. I had worked extra shifts for all of it. My regular job at the medical billing office paid $42,000 a year, enough to live on, barely, if I was careful. But I was always sending money to Jordan, always buying plane tickets I couldn't afford, always trying to prove I was good enough to be part of his life. So I'd taken a second job 2 years ago, working Friday and Saturday nights at a grocery store, scanning items and bagging groceries, while people half my age called me ma'am and asked me to double bag the heavy stuff. I made $14.50 an hour. Before taxes. Every scan of a cereal box, every paper or plastic, every ache in my feet after a 6-hour shift standing on concrete floors, it had all been for this. For the moment when Jordan would get married and I would be there, dressed in my expensive suit, beaming in the photographs, proof that I had done it right, that I had raised a good man, that all the sacrifice had meant something. Instead, I was sitting on the floor in a hallway, hidden from view. I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. There was Jordan at his college graduation, his arm around me, both of us smiling. I had flown out for that too, paid for his graduation dinner, bought him the watch he wore in every professional photo he posted on LinkedIn. I scrolled further back. Jordan at 16, rolling his eyes when I'd asked to take a picture before his first date. Jordan at 10, gap-toothed and proud, holding up a spelling bee trophy. Jordan at 3, covered in birthday cake. Chocolate, smeared across his cheeks. When had he stopped looking at me like I mattered? I thought about the rejections, the small cuts that had prepared me for this moment, the phone calls that went to voicemail, the texts that took days to answer, the Christmas when he'd said they were spending it with Vanessa's family and I'd eaten rotisserie chicken alone in my apartment, the Mother's Day when he'd sent a generic e-card at 11:47 p.m., the kind with cartoon flowers and a message he hadn't even personalized. I had made excuses for all of it. He's busy. He's building his life. He's in love. This is what it means. When your child grows up, you become less central, less necessary. I had told myself this was normal, but this wasn't normal. I could leave. The thought came quietly, like a whisper from somewhere deep inside me. I could stand up right now, walk out those front doors, get in a taxi, go back to my bargain hotel. I could pack my suitcase, go to the airport, change my flight. I could be home by tomorrow morning. Jordan wouldn't even notice I was gone until it was time for dinner. When he finally came looking for me and found an empty hallway, what would he feel? Relief? My hand was already reaching for my purse. I was still sitting there, my hand frozen on my purse, when I heard footsteps approaching from the hallway that led to the restrooms. I looked up, ready to pretend I was just resting, just checking my phone, just anything other than what I was, a mother hiding from her own son's wedding. The man who rounded the corner was older, maybe 70, with silver hair and a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire outfit. He walked with the ease of someone who belonged in places like this, who had never been asked to wait outside. I expected him to walk past me, to politely ignore the woman sitting on the floor like I was part of the architecture. Instead, he stopped. "Miss," he said, and his voice was gentle, the kind of gentleness that comes from real kindness, not pity. "Are you all right?" The question broke something in me. Not, "What are you doing here?" Not, "Do you need help finding your seat?" Just, "Are you all right?" I wasn't all right. I hadn't been all right in years. "I'm fine," I said automatically, the lie I'd been telling myself and everyone else for as long as I could remember. Just taking a break. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. He glanced at the closed ballroom doors, then at the gift bag beside me, then back at my face. He was putting the pieces together. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the floor beside me. I nodded, too surprised to say no. He sat down. Right there on the marble floor. This elegant man in his expensive suit. He didn't grunt or complain about his knees. He just lowered himself down with careful dignity and leaned his back against the pillar next to mine. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of the ceremony beyond the doors. Someone was reading something. A poem, maybe, or a prayer. There was a ripple of soft laughter from the guests. "My daughter got married 7 years ago," he said finally. "Beautiful wedding. Tuscany. Villa on a hillside, overlooking vineyards. She sent me photos." I turned to look at him. He was staring straight ahead, his hands folded in his lap. "She didn't invite you," I said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Oh, she invited me," he said, and there was no bitterness in his voice, just a deep, tired sadness. 3 weeks before the wedding, after all the plans were made, after the seating chart was finalized, she sent an email, not even a phone call, saying there was space for me if I wanted to come, if I wanted to, like it was my choice, my preference, instead of what it really was. What was it really? An obligation she was checking off a list. He turned to look at me then, and his eyes were kind but knowing. She didn't want me there, but she wanted to be able to say she'd invited me, wanted to tell people her father had chosen not to come, rather than admit she'd almost excluded him entirely. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "What did you do?" "I went." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I flew to Italy. I stayed in a hotel she didn't book for me. I sat at a table near the kitchen with people I'd never met. I gave her a check she never cashed, and I watched her dance with the stepfather who raised her after I left, and I understood that some mistakes you can't undo, some distances are too far to cross. But you tried," I whispered. "I tried," he agreed, and it nearly destroyed me, because trying, showing up, being there, it doesn't always matter. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes sacrifice isn't enough. Sometimes you can give everything and still be nothing to the person you'd die for. A tear slid down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. "My son asked me to wait out here," I said, "until after the ceremony. He said it would be easier for everyone." Mr. Thomas nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd already guessed. "And you were going to do it?" You were going to sit here in this hallway, waiting for permission to attend your own child's wedding. I flew 5 states, I said, and my voice cracked. I spent everything. I worked extra shifts for months. I just wanted to be there. I just wanted him to want me there. I know. He reached over and patted my hand, once, gently. I know exactly what you wanted. The same thing I wanted in Tuscany. The same thing every parent wants, to matter. To be seen. To have all that love and sacrifice mean something to the person you gave it to. He stood up then, his knees cracking slightly, and offered me his hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. Miss, he said, still holding my hand, I learned something in that villa in Tuscany, watching my daughter marry a man who barely acknowledged I existed. I learned that waiting for someone to value you is the slowest way to die. He released my hand and straightened his jacket. You deserve better than this hallway, he said simply. You know that, don't you? And God help me. I wasn't sure I did. Mr. Thomas was still standing there looking at me with those kind, knowing eyes when I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but for the first time all day, it wasn't from fear or shame. It was something else, something harder. What's your name? He asked. Eleanor. Eleanor, he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. My name is Robert Thomas. And Eleanor, whatever you're about to do, don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't give him a chance to make you change your mind. I nodded, my thumb hovering over Jordan's name in my contacts. I had texted him thousands of times, little messages throughout the years. Thinking of you, hope you're having a good day. Love you, sweetheart. Messages he sometimes answered with a thumbs up, or a THX, or nothing at all. This would be different. I typed, I'm leaving, don't contact me. My finger hovered over the send button. 6 words. After 26 years, our relationship was ending in 6 words. I thought about adding more. Thought about explaining that I couldn't sit in that hallway, that I had some dignity left, that he had finally asked for more than I could give. I thought about telling him I loved him, but I loved myself too, that I was sorry but also not sorry, that this hurt but staying would hurt more. But Mr. Thomas was right. Explanations were just invitations to argue. Apologies were just doorways for manipulation. I pressed send. The message delivered immediately. I watched the screen, waiting for the 3 dots that would mean he was typing, that he'd seen it, that he was panicking or angry or sorry. But the ceremony was still happening. His phone was probably in his pocket, on silent, forgotten. He was standing at an altar promising his life to someone else. And he had no idea his mother was disappearing. Good, Mr. Thomas said quietly. Now block him. What? Block his number. Right now, before you talk yourself out of it. Because in an hour or 2, he's going to see that message, and he's going to call you. And he's going to say all the right things, or all the wrong things in exactly the right way, and you're going to answer because you're his mother and that's what mothers do. My throat tightened. I can't just... You can. His voice was firm but not unkind. Eleanor, I didn't block my daughter's number after Tuscany. I told myself I was being mature, leaving the door open, showing her I was the bigger person. Do you know what happened? I shook my head. She called me 3 months later. Not to apologize. Not to build a bridge. She called to ask if I could loan her and her husband $15,000 for a down payment on a house. Said it would mean so much to have her father's support at this important time in her life. He laughed, but it was hollow. I gave her $10,000, all I had in savings. She sent me a thank you card with a stock photo of a sunset on it. I haven't heard from her since. I looked down at my phone, at Jordan's name on the screen. They know exactly when to come back, Mr. Thomas continued. They know exactly what to say to make you believe this time will be different. And it never is. Because people who love you don't make you wait in hallways. People who value you don't hide you like a secret. And people who respect you don't come back only when they need something. I thought about all the times Jordan had called in the past 2 years. 4 times. I could count them on one hand. Once when his car broke down and he needed $800 for repairs. Once when he was applying for a mortgage and needed me to send tax documents. Once when Vanessa's birthday was coming up and he wanted suggestions for gifts. And once, just once, on my birthday, a 30-second call that felt more like an obligation than a conversation. He only called when he needed something. The realization settled over me like a heavy blanket. Cold, suffocating, true. I went into my phone settings, found Jordan's contact, stared at his name, at the photo I'd set years ago, him at his college graduation, smiling, his arm around me, back when I still believed I mattered. I blocked the number. Then I blocked him on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, every platform, every connection, every thread that tied us together. My fingers moved quickly now, methodically, like I was performing surgery, cutting out something diseased before it could spread. "How does it feel?" Mr. Thomas asked. I waited for the guilt, for the maternal instinct to kick in, for the voice in my head that would tell me I was a terrible mother, that you don't give up on your children, that blood is thicker than water. But all I felt was tired. "Empty," I said honestly. "Empty is better than destroyed," he said. "Empty you can fill with something new. Destroyed just stays broken." Inside the ballroom, I heard applause. The ceremony was over. Jordan was married. In a few minutes, he would check his phone and see my message, and I would already be unreachable. "Come on," Mr. Thomas said, offering me his arm. "Let me buy you a coffee, somewhere far away from here." I picked up my gift bag, that stupid, expensive gift bag with its $1,200 check, and took his arm. We walked toward the exit, past the closed ballroom doors, past the marble pillars, past the life I'd been begging to be part of. I didn't look back. The coffee shop Mr. Thomas took me to was 3 blocks from the venue, a small place with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. We sat by the window, and he ordered us both coffee and a slice of lemon cake to share. He didn't ask me questions, didn't push me to talk. He just sat there. A steady presence, while I stared at my untouched cup and tried to remember how to breathe. After an hour, he wrote his phone number on a napkin. "If you need someone to talk to," he said, "no judgment, no advice unless you ask for it, just someone who understands." I took the napkin and put it in my purse next to the letter I'd written to Jordan, the one telling him how proud I was. I would burn that letter when I got home. Mr. Thomas walked me back to my hotel. We said goodbye in the lobby, and he hugged me, a real hug, the kind that says, "I see your pain and it matters." I couldn't remember the last time Jordan had hugged me like that. I spent the rest of that day and all of the next in my hotel room. I couldn't bring myself to change my flight, couldn't bring myself to go home yet. I just lay on the scratchy comforter and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of 26 years pressing down on my chest. My phone rang 17 times that first night. Not Jordan, I'd blocked him, but a number I didn't recognize. I knew it was him, calling from Vanessa's phone, or a friend's phone, or the hotel phone. I didn't answer. There were voicemails. I deleted them without listening. There were texts from the unknown number. I could see the previews on my lock screen. "Mom, what's going on?" And, "Can we please talk?" And, "You're being really unfair right now." Unfair. I was being unfair. I turned off my phone. On the second day, I finally changed my flight. There was a $200 fee. I paid it with the credit card that was already maxed out and felt nothing. I would fly home that evening, and tomorrow I would go back to work, back to my apartment, back to my life. A life that would look exactly the same, except for the hole where my son used to be. Except the hole had always been there. I was just finally admitting it. I was packing my suitcase when someone knocked on my hotel room door. My whole body went cold. I looked through the peephole and saw a hotel employee holding an envelope. "Delivery for Eleanor Dawson," he said when I opened the door. I took the envelope with shaking hands and gave him a $5 bill I couldn't afford. Inside was a handwritten note on the hotel's stationery. "Mom, I've been trying to reach you. Please call me. I'm in room 438. We need to talk. Jordan." He was here, in this hotel, 4 floors above me. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the note. He'd come looking for me. That meant something, didn't it? That he'd tracked me down, that he wanted to talk. Maybe he was sorry. Maybe he'd realized what he'd done. Maybe... I turned on my phone. Immediately, it buzzed with notifications, texts, voicemails, missed calls. I opened the text thread from the unknown number. Vanessa's phone, I realize now, from the contact photo that popped up. The most recent message was from 20 minutes ago. Mom, I really need to talk to you. It's important. Not I'm sorry, not I was wrong. Just, I need to talk to you. My hands were trembling as I typed, I'm here. The response came in seconds. Thank God. Can you come to our room? 4:38. No, call me. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then my phone rang. Vanessa's number. I answered. Mom, Jordan's voice, relief flooding through it. Jesus, you scared me. Why did you leave like that? Why did you block me? Not, I'm sorry you were hurt. Not, I shouldn't have made you wait outside. Just confusion that I dared to have a boundary. I couldn't stay, I said quietly. Okay, but you could have told me. You just disappeared. People were asking where you were at dinner, and I had to make up some excuse about you not feeling well. It was really embarrassing. Embarrassing. My absence had been embarrassing for him. Jordan, why are you calling? I wanted to make sure you're okay. And look, I know the wedding didn't go exactly how you wanted, but you have to understand, it was complicated. Vanessa's parents are traditional, and we had to make some compromises for our future, you know? Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the people you love. Sacrifices for the people you love. The words hung in the air like poison. Mom? Are you there? I'm here. Good. Listen, I actually wanted to ask you something. Vanessa and I are supposed to leave for our honeymoon tomorrow. We're going to Cabo, but there's been a situation with the payment. The resort is asking for a deposit we didn't budget for, and with the wedding expenses, we're kind of tapped out. I was wondering if you could help us out. Just $5,000. We'll pay you back after we get our tax return. $5,000. For a honeymoon in Cabo. 2 days after he'd made me stand in a hallway because I wasn't good enough to watch him get married. You want money, I said flatly. It's not like that, Mom. This is our honeymoon, it's important. And you always said you wanted to support my happiness, right? This would really mean a lot to both of us. Both of us. Vanessa was probably sitting right there, listening. Is that why you came to find me? I asked. For money? What? No. I came because I was worried. The money thing it came up. But if you can't help, I understand. I just thought, I usually what, Jordan? Silence. I usually give you whatever you ask for. I finished for him. I usually sacrifice everything so you can have what you want. I usually make myself smaller so you can feel bigger. Mom, that's not fair. No, I said, and my voice was steady now, hard as stone. What's not fair is asking me to fund a honeymoon after you hid me from your wedding. What's not fair is only calling me when you need something. What's not fair is 26 years of me giving everything and you taking it like it's owed to you. I don't. This isn't, Mom. You're being really hurtful right now. I laughed. Actually laughed. I'm being hurtful. If you don't want to help, just say so. I don't want to help, I said, and I don't want you to call me again. I meant what I said in my text. We're done. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call. It rang again. I turned it off. Then I finished packing my suitcase, checked out of the hotel through a side exit, and took a taxi to the airport 4 hours early. I never wanted to give him the chance to find me again. I sat in the airport terminal for 3 hours before my flight, my phone still turned off, my suitcase at my feet. Around me, families rushed past, parents chasing toddlers, teenagers rolling their eyes at their mothers, elderly couples walking hand in hand, normal families doing normal things. I wondered if any of them knew how lucky they were. At some point, I turned my phone back on. I told myself it was just to check my boarding pass, but that was a lie. Some part of me, the part that had spent 26 years being a mother, needed to know if he'd tried again. He had. 12 missed calls, 15 text messages, and 1 voicemail. I shouldn't have listened to it. I knew better. But my finger pressed play before my brain could stop it. Mom. Jordan's voice was different now. tight, frustrated. "I don't know what's going on with you, but this is ridiculous. You're my mother. You don't just get to cut me off because I asked for help. That's not how family works. I know you're upset about the wedding, and maybe we could have handled things better, but you're being incredibly selfish right now. Vanessa is really hurt by all of this." Her parents are asking questions. "You're making this whole thing about you when it's supposed to be about us, about our marriage. I need you to call me back so we can work this out like adults." We leave for Cabo in the morning, and I really need an answer about the money. Just call me back, please. I listened to it twice. The first time, I heard my son. The boy I'd raised. The child I'd sacrificed everything for. And some old, deep part of me wanted to call him back, to apologize, to send him the money, to fix whatever I'd broken. The second time, I heard the words he'd actually said. "You're being selfish. You're making this about you. I need an answer about the money." Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just anger that I dared to have boundaries, and a demand that I fund his vacation. I opened my text messages and typed a response. My hands were steady now. "Jordan, I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me. I'm not sending you money. Not for your honeymoon. Not for anything else. I'm not going to respond to your calls or texts. I'm not going to explain myself or justify my decision. I'm simply done." I paused, reading it over. It was clear. It was final. But it wasn't complete. There was something else I needed to say, something I'd never said in 26 years of motherhood. I kept typing. "For your entire life, I've been mom. I've been the person who gives and sacrifices and shows up and sends money and asks for nothing in return. I thought that's what love was. I thought if I just gave enough, you'd see my value. But I understand now that I've never been a person to you. I've been a function, an ATM, a safety net. A problem to be managed when you need something, and an embarrassment to be hidden when you don't." My eyes were burning, but no tears fell. "When you made me wait outside your wedding, you showed me the truth I've been avoiding for years. You don't love me, Jordan. You love what I can do for you. And I can't live like that anymore. I can't keep breaking myself into smaller and smaller pieces hoping you'll finally see me as whole." My thumb hovered over the screen. I could still delete it. I could still soften it, make it easier for him to swallow, add something about how I'd always love him, how maybe someday we could rebuild. I could leave the door open just a crack. But Mr. Thomas's words echoed in my mind. "Leaving the door open just gives them a way back in to hurt you again." I kept typing. "I'm not your mother anymore, Jordan. I'm a person who deserves respect and kindness and basic human decency, a person who has value beyond what's in her bank account. And I'm choosing to be that person from now on, which means I'm choosing not to have you in my life." I read it one more time. It was harsh. It was final. It was true. "I wish you well. I hope you have a good life. But you'll have it without me. Don't contact me again. I won't respond." I pressed send before I could change my mind. Then I did what I should have done days ago. I didn't just block his number. I deleted his contact entirely, erased his name, his photo, his birthday reminder. I removed him from my emergency contacts. I unfriended Vanessa on Facebook, blocked her on Instagram, severed every digital thread that connected us. My phone felt lighter in my hand. The boarding announcement for my flight crackled over the loudspeaker. I stood up, grabbed my suitcase, and got in line. An older woman in front of me was FaceTiming with someone, a grandchild maybe, from the squealing and the "I love you, Nana," that I could hear through her speaker. It should have hurt, that reminder of what I didn't have. But it didn't. Because I'd finally realized something Mr. Thomas had tried to tell me in that marble hallway. You can't lose what you never really had. Jordan had never been the son I'd imagined. I'd been in love with a fantasy, sacrificing myself for a relationship that only existed in my head. The real Jordan, the one who'd hidden me at his wedding and called only when he needed money, that Jordan I didn't want anymore. I boarded the plane, found my seat, middle row, cramped, the kind I always chose because it was cheapest. Put my suitcase in the overhead bin, buckled my seatbelt. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa." I don't know what Jordan did to upset you, but you're being incredibly unfair. He's your son. You don't abandon family over money." I blocked the number without responding. The plane took off, carrying me away from the worst weekend of my life and toward something I couldn't quite name yet. Not happiness, not peace, but maybe, eventually, something like freedom. I closed my eyes and didn't let myself look back. I called my sister Diana from the airport parking lot back home. It was late, past 11, but Diana had always been a night owl, and I needed to hear her voice before I walked into my empty apartment and faced what my life had become. She answered on the second ring. "Ellie, how was the wedding?" I stood there under the fluorescent lights, my suitcase beside me, and felt something crack open in my chest. He made me wait outside. Silence. Then, what? Jordan. He told me to wait in the hallway during the ceremony, said it would be easier for everyone if I stayed outside until the reception. My voice was flat, mechanical. I'd cried all my tears on the plane. Now there was just emptiness. "Oh, Ellie." Diana's voice went soft. "Oh, honey." "Did you know?" I asked. "Did he tell you anything? About the wedding? About me?" More silence. Too much silence. "Diana, I didn't know he was going to do that," she said quickly. "I swear I didn't know he'd make you wait outside. But what?" I heard her take a breath. "Ellie, I didn't want to tell you this. I kept hoping things would get better, that he'd grow up, that I was wrong about what I was seeing." My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you see?" "Last Christmas, when you called to tell me Jordan was engaged, I was happy for you. You sounded so excited. So I sent him a congratulations message on Facebook. Just something nice, welcome to the family, Vanessa, kind of thing. And Vanessa responded, thanked me. We chatted a bit. Okay. And then, God, Ellie, I don't know how to say this without it hurting. Just say it. Everything already hurts." Diana was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was careful, like she was diffusing a bomb. "Vanessa mentioned they were doing engagement photos and asked if I had any good pictures of Jordan from when he was younger. Family photos, childhood stuff, so I sent her a few. Including that one from your 50th birthday party, remember? You and Jordan at the restaurant, both of you smiling." I remembered. I'd paid for that dinner, invited 8 people. Only Diana and Jordan had shown up. Vanessa wrote back and said thanks, but they probably wouldn't use that one because they were going for a more polished aesthetic for the wedding slideshow. Those were her exact words. More polished. The parking lot lights hummed above me. A car alarm went off somewhere in the distance. That's when Jordan messaged me. Diana continued, separate from Vanessa. He said he appreciated me sending photos, but could I be selective about which ones I shared? He said. She stopped. "Tell me." He said you had a tendency to look unsophisticated in photos, and he didn't want Vanessa's family to get the wrong impression. Unsophisticated. The word landed like a punch. "There's more," Diana said, and I could hear she was crying now. I told him that was a horrible thing to say about his own mother. And he said I didn't understand the situation, that Vanessa's family was old money and had certain expectations. He said you didn't know how to act around people like that you'd embarrass him if you weren't careful. I leaned against my car, my legs suddenly weak. I called him out on it, Ellie. I told him he was being a snob and an asshole. And you know what he said? He said, "Aunt Diana, I love my mom, but she's not like us. She doesn't understand the world Vanessa and I are building. I need her to either adapt or accept that she can't be part of certain things." Certain things, I repeated numbly. Like his wedding. Like his whole life, Diana said. "Ellie, I've been watching this happen for 2 years, ever since he met Vanessa. He started talking differently, dressing differently. He stopped mentioning you in his Facebook posts. When Vanessa's parents came to visit, he didn't introduce you. Remember when you drove 3 hours to meet them, and he said they'd had to cancel at the last minute? They were never coming." "They were never coming," Diana confirmed. "He posted pictures from that weekend. They went to some fancy restaurant in the city. You can see Vanessa's parents in the background of one shot." I closed my eyes. I'd spent that weekend alone in a hotel, waiting for a meeting that was never going to happen. Jordan had texted me the next day saying sorry for the mix-up, and I'd believed him. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Because every time I tried, you defended him. You made excuses. You said he was busy, he was building his career, he was in love. You wanted so badly to believe in him that I couldn't be the one to destroy that. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being too harsh. You weren't wrong. No, Diana said quietly. I wasn't. A security guard walked past, eyeing me standing alone in the parking lot at midnight. I probably looked suspicious, or crazy, or both. There's something else, Diana said. After I confronted Jordan about what he said, Vanessa sent me a message. Very polite, very careful. She said she understood that family dynamics could be complicated, but she hoped I'd respect their boundaries regarding Jordan's relationship with you. She said they were trying to establish healthy distance from certain negative influences. I'm a negative influence. She said you had a pattern of financial dependence that was unhealthy for Jordan's growth. That he needed space to become his own man without the weight of your expectations. I laughed. Actually laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. Financial dependence. I've given him thousands of dollars. I know. I worked 2 jobs so he could have spending money in college. I know, Ellie. And she thinks he's dependent on me? She thinks you use money to manipulate him, Diana said. That's what she told me. She said Jordan felt guilty every time you sent him money because he knew you were struggling, and that guilt was toxic to their relationship. She said they needed to create boundaries so Jordan could break free from the cycle of obligation. The cycle of obligation. My love had been reframed as manipulation. My sacrifice had been rewritten as control. When did she tell you this? I asked. 3 months ago. Right after they sent out the wedding invitations. I didn't get one either, by the way. Jordan told me it was family only. Immediate family. I didn't realize that meant I was out too until I saw Vanessa's aunt and uncle in the ceremony photos on Instagram. So I hadn't been the only one excluded, just the one stupid enough to show up anyway. Why are people like this? I whispered. How do you raise someone, love them, give them everything, and have them turn around and… I don't know, Diana said. I've been asking myself that same question about Jordan for months. He used to be such a sweet kid. Remember when he was 8 and he saved his allowance for 2 months to buy you that necklace for Mother's Day? I'd worn that necklace until the chain broke. I'd kept it in a drawer, meaning to get it fixed, meaning to wear it again someday. I would throw it away when I got home. He's not that kid anymore, I said. No, Diana agreed. He's not. And Ellie, I know this hurts, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay to mourn who he was and let go of who he's become. I already did, I said. I cut him off, blocked his number, told him not to contact me again. Diana was quiet for a moment. Then, good, I'm proud of you. Are you? Yes. Because you deserve better than a son who's ashamed of you. You deserve better than a life spent trying to be good enough for someone who's already decided you're not. I looked up at the night sky, at the stars barely visible through the city lights. I don't know who I am if I'm not his mother. Then maybe it's time to find out, Diana said gently. Come stay with me for a while. Atlanta's nice this time of year. We can figure it out together. I can't just leave. I have work, You have nothing holding you there that matters more than your own healing, Diana interrupted. And Ellie? You have vacation days. You have savings, or you would if you hadn't spent it all on Jordan. You have a whole life ahead of you that doesn't have to revolve around a son who doesn't appreciate you. She was right. I had 2 weeks of vacation left. I had an apartment I didn't own, a job I could do anywhere, a city with no family and few friends because I'd spent years working extra shifts instead of building a life. I'll think about it, I said. Think fast, Diana said, because I'm already making up the guest room. I smiled for the first time in days. I love you. I love you too. And Ellie, you're not unsophisticated. You're real. And that's worth more than all of Vanessa's old money combined. I hung up and stood there in the parking lot, my suitcase at my feet, my phone warm in my hand. Then I Googled flights to Atlanta. I didn't go straight to Atlanta. First, I had to dismantle the life I'd built around a son who didn't want me. The apartment looked different when I walked in that night. Smaller, sadder, The walls were covered with photos of Jordan, his high school graduation, his college acceptance letter framed like a trophy, a candid shot of him laughing at something I couldn't remember. There were no pictures of me, no pictures of Diana, no pictures of friends or vacations or anything that suggested I had a life beyond being Jordan's mother. I started taking them down. One by one, I pulled the frames off the wall, leaving behind pale rectangles on the paint. I didn't look at the photos. Didn't let myself linger on his face, on the memories, on the version of him I'd loved. I just stacked them in a box and carried the box to the dumpster behind the building. It was past midnight. The complex was quiet. I threw the box in and listened to the glass crack. Then I went back upstairs and kept going. The shelf of books I'd bought about parenting adult children, gone. The folder of recipes I'd been collecting to cook for him when he visited, shredded. The spare bedroom I'd kept, made up in case he ever needed a place to stay. I stripped the bed and packed the linens in garbage bags for donation. By 3 a.m, my apartment looked like someone else lived there. Someone without a son. Someone starting over. I called in sick to work the next day. Then the day after that. I had sick days accumulated. Years of them. Because I'd never taken time off. I'd been too busy working extra shifts, earning money to send to Jordan. On the 3rd day, I pulled out the napkin Mr. Thomas had given me. His phone number was written in neat, careful script. I'd tucked it in my wallet, not sure I'd ever use it, but unable to throw it away. I texted him, "This is Eleanor, from the wedding. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out." His response came within minutes. "Eleanor, I was hoping I'd hear from you. Are you all right?" I typed and deleted 3 different responses. Finally settled on, "I'm trying to be. That's the hardest part," he wrote back. "Would you like to talk? Coffee? Or just a phone call if that's easier?" We met at the same coffee shop he'd taken me to after the wedding. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at the same table by the window, 2 cups of coffee, waiting. "You remembered," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. "You looked like you needed something sweet that day," he said, pushing one of the cups toward me. "Figured you still might." It was a latte with caramel. I took a sip and felt something in my chest loosen. "I cut him off," I said. "Completely. Blocked his number, told him not to contact me. He called anyway, asking for money for his honeymoon." Mr. Thomas nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd already known. "How much did he want?" $5,000. "And you said no." "I said no," I confirmed, and then I told him I wasn't his mother anymore, that I was a person, that I was done. How did that feel? I considered the question. Terrible and right, both at the same time. "That's exactly what it should feel like," Mr. Thomas said. "If it felt easy, you'd be the kind of person who could have done it years ago. The fact that it hurt means you loved him, really loved him." "But Eleanor, love isn't supposed to destroy you." "I keep waiting to regret it," I admitted. "Keep waiting for the moment when I realize I made a mistake, that I should have tried harder, that I gave up too easily." Have you felt that way yet? I thought about the photos in the dumpster, the empty walls in my apartment, the message Jordan had sent through Vanessa's phone, not apologizing but demanding I stop being unfair. "No," I said. "I keep feeling relieved, and that makes me feel like a terrible mother." "You're not a terrible mother," Mr. Thomas said firmly. "You're a person who finally recognized that she was being used. There's a difference between being a mother and being a martyr. You spent 26 years being both. Now you're choosing to just be Eleanor." "I don't know how to be just Eleanor," I said, and my voice cracked. "I've been Jordan's mom for so long. Every decision I made, every job I took, every dollar I spent, it was all for him. What do I even do now?" Mr. Thomas reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you want." The simplicity of it almost made me laugh. Whatever I want. When was the last time I'd even asked myself what I wanted? "I'm thinking about going to stay with my sister for a while," I said. "In Atlanta," she offered. "That sounds good. A change of scenery. Time with someone who values you. And I'm going to sell some things. Simplify. I have furniture Jordan bought with money I gave him. He left it at my place when he moved in with Vanessa. I'm going to sell it all." "Good. And I'm going to. I stopped, suddenly embarrassed. What? I'm going to take a real vacation. Not to visit anyone. Not for any reason except that I want to. I've never done that. Mr. Thomas smiled. Where will you go? I don't know. Somewhere warm. Somewhere I can sit on a beach and not think about anyone else's needs, but my own. That sounds perfect. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking our coffee. Outside, people rushed past on their way to work, to appointments, to lives that didn't include sitting in a coffee shop at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. Can I ask you something? I said finally. Of course. Your daughter. Do you ever regret cutting her off? Mr. Thomas considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that she became the kind of person who made it necessary. But do I regret protecting myself? No. Because 3 years after I stopped trying to earn her love, I started building a life I actually enjoyed. I volunteer at a literacy center. I travel. I have friends who call me just to talk, not because they need something. I'm happy, Eleanor, really happy. And I never would have found that if I'd kept sacrificing myself on the altar of her indifference. I want that, I whispered. I want to be happy. Then be happy, he said simply. Give yourself permission. You've spent 26 years asking Jordan's permission to matter. Stop asking. Just be. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The credit card I'd maxed out for the wedding trip showed a balance of $3,847. The payment was due in 2 weeks. I'd been planning to pick up extra shifts to pay it down, to work weekends and evenings, sacrificing my time and energy to clean up the mess Jordan's wedding had made of my finances. Instead, I opened my savings account, the one I'd depleted sending Jordan money, and looked at what was left, $1,200. Enough for a plane ticket to Atlanta. Enough for a week at a cheap beach resort. Enough for a new start. I transferred it to checking. I'm doing it, I said to Mr. Thomas. I'm choosing me. He raised his coffee cup. To Eleanor, who is more than enough, exactly as she is. We clinked our paper cups together, and for the first time in 26 years, I believed it might be true. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Savannah, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air smelled like jasmine and salt water. Below me, the street was just beginning to wake up, a man walking his dog, a woman jogging past with earbuds in, the bakery on the corner turning on its lights. This view had cost me $950 a month, which was more than I'd paid in my old city. But I wasn't sending Jordan $300 anymore, wasn't working a second job. Wasn't saving every penny for emergencies that always seemed to be his, never mine. I could afford this view. I could afford a life. Diana had convinced me to stay in Atlanta for 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks had turned into a month. We'd spend our days drinking coffee on her porch, taking long walks, talking about everything and nothing. She'd helped me see that the life I'd been living wasn't really a life at all. It was a waiting room, waiting for Jordan to need me. Waiting for Jordan to appreciate me. Waiting for a relationship that only existed in my imagination. You know what you need? Diana had said one morning, scrolling through apartment listings on her laptop. A fresh start. Somewhere nobody knows you as Jordan's mom. Somewhere you can just be Eleanor. Savannah had been her idea. It's beautiful, she'd said. And it's far enough away that you won't be tempted to drive back to your old life when things get hard. She'd been right about that. Savannah was 8 hours from where Jordan lived, far enough that I couldn't show up on his doorstep in a moment of weakness, far enough that he couldn't show up on mine. Not that he'd tried. I'd sent him one letter, 6 weeks after the wedding. A single page, formal and brief, typed on plain paper. No sentiment, no emotion, just information. Jordan, this letter is to inform you of my change of address for legal and official purposes. Effective immediately, I have relocated and can be reached at the address below for any necessary legal documentation only. This is not an invitation to contact me for any other reason. I wish you well in your marriage and your life. Eleanor Dawson. I'd included my new P.O. box address, not my apartment, never my apartment, and mailed it certified, signature required. I'd wanted proof that he'd received it. wanted there to be no question that I'd done my duty, provided the information he might need for tax purposes or emergencies, and nothing more. He'd signed for it on a Tuesday. I knew because I'd tracked the delivery obsessively, watching the little map on the Postal Service website as the letter made its way across the country to him. He never responded. Part of me had expected him to. Expected anger or confusion or some last-ditch attempt to manipulate me back into his life. But there was nothing, just silence, which told me everything I needed to know about how much I'd actually mattered. Mr. Thomas called me every Sunday. We'd talk for an hour, sometimes more, about books and current events and the small details of our weeks. He'd visited once, flying down for a long weekend, and we'd walked through Forsyth Park and eaten beignets at a cafe on River Street. It wasn't romantic, we were both too old and too damaged for that kind of simplicity, but it was something better. It was friendship. Real, uncomplicated friendship with someone who understood what it meant to lose a child who was still alive. "You seem lighter," he'd said on that visit, watching me laugh at something a street performer had done. "I feel lighter," I'd admitted, like I've been carrying a weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I'd started volunteering at a literacy center 2 months after moving to Savannah. 3 afternoons a week, I helped adults learn to read. There was a woman named Gloria, 63 years old, who'd hidden her illiteracy her entire life. When she read her first complete sentence, "The cat sat on the mat," she'd cried. And I'd cried with her, because I understood what it felt like to finally do something you'd been told you couldn't. I'd also started taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings. I was terrible at it. My bowls were lopsided and my vases looked like they'd been made by a drunk toddler. But I loved it. Loved the feel of the clay in my hands, the quiet concentration, the way I could destroy something that wasn't working and start over. The teacher, a woman named Ruth with clay permanently embedded under her fingernails, had pulled me aside after my 3rd class. "You're getting better," she'd said. "I'm really not," I'd laughed, looking at the misshapen mug I'd just created. "No, I mean at letting go. That first class you were so tense, trying so hard to make everything perfect. Now you're just playing. That's when the real art happens." I'd taken the misshapen mug home and used it for my morning coffee. It leaked a little from a crack I hadn't noticed, but I loved it anyway. It was mine. Imperfect and functional and completely mine. My apartment was small, a 1-bedroom with exposed brick and hardwood floors that creaked. The furniture was second-hand, bought from estate sales and thrift stores. Nothing matched. Everything was cheap. And it was the most beautiful place I'd ever lived because every single item in it was something I'd chosen for myself. There were plants on the windowsill, succulents that didn't require much care. There were books on the shelf that I'd bought because they interested me, not because they'd make me a better mother. There were photos on the wall of Diana and me in Atlanta, of Mr. Thomas and me at Forsyth Park, of the sunrise from this very balcony. There were no photos of Jordan. I'd thought that would hurt more, thought I'd wake up one day and regret erasing him from my visual history. But I didn't. Because those photos had never really been about him, they'd been about who I'd wanted him to be, and I was done living in that fantasy. My phone buzzed. A text from Diana. "Coffee this weekend? I'm driving down Friday night. I want to see this pottery you keep telling me about." I smiled and texted back, "Yes. And I'm making you try the beignets." Deal. Love you, sis. Love you too. I set my phone down and took a sip of coffee from my leaky, lopsided mug. The sun was fully up now, turning the sky from pink to blue. Somewhere, Jordan was waking up in the life he'd built without me. Maybe he thought about me sometimes. Maybe he regretted how things had ended. Maybe he told Vanessa I was difficult, unreasonable, the kind of mother who'd abandoned her son over nothing. It didn't matter. For 26 years, I'd shaped my life around his needs, his wants, his approval. I'd made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I'd sacrificed everything at the altar of motherhood, believing that love meant endless giving, endless forgiving, endless waiting for scraps of affection. But standing here on this balcony, in this city where nobody knew my history, where I was just Eleanor, not Jordan's mom, Not the woman who worked 2 jobs, not the charity case or the embarrassment. I finally understood what Mr. Thomas had tried to tell me that day in the marble hallway. You can't lose what you never really had. And you can't start living until you stop dying for someone else. I'd spent 56 years being what other people needed. A mother, a worker, a giver, a martyr. Now, finally, I was just myself. And myself was enough. I raised my leaky mug to the sunrise, to the new city, to the life I'd built from the rubble of the old one. To Eleanor, I whispered, who is more than enough, exactly as she is. The sun continued to rise, indifferent and beautiful, and I stood there on my balcony and watched it, free at last. If you liked my story, you can support me by subscribing and sharing this story so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do if you were in my place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think, and also write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like mine, like the video, and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time.